Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where one of the bigger games of the 16-bit era was Sonic the Hedgehog. And as you can imagine, it spawned many imitations, and the Amiga was home to a few of them, which I have lined up for you. But what makes a Sonic game? Well, I have 4 criteria. 1. It needs to be fast. Duh. 2. The levels need to be open and have multiple routes. 3. It should have an animal character. And 4. You should have some amount of health. So one-hit deaths are out. And I'm sure some of you are already writing some angry messages in the comments about how I don't get Sonic games. Well, please go ahead. I'd love to hear what you think. But with those in mind, let's check out some Amiga only or Amiga first games. First up is Super Frog. This was developed and published by Team 17 in 1993, and featured a lovely animated intro, which lets us know why we're playing as a frog. And while you're running around as the frog, you'll find out that this is very much a Euro platformer, as you have to collect coins to open up the exit. And then obviously try and find the exit as well, in these relatively large open levels, that are also full of hidden passages and routes. The basic controls themselves are decent, with our little froggy friend moving at a decent pace, and initially only having a jump attack as his main way of defeating the foes. But there are a few power-ups that will help. The main one is, and I quote, the Destructo Spud, a projectile that Soups can throw around in numerous directions. But you will have to wait for it to return before you can throw it again. And why this isn't something more in keeping with a frog, like just off the tip of my tongue, I'm not sure. The game includes other items as well, like the wings, which means you can now glide down to the ground rather than fall. And there's also speed ups as well as downs that you can find as well. And what about that health? Well, as we can see, we have a number of blocks at the top of the screen, and each can take a hit. Unless it spikes, those things are instant deaths, and they're scattered everywhere. And you can refill your health by picking up these bottles of Lucozade. Yep, this was another Amiga game with an odd licensing. The worlds are quite nice and varied, as you start in the forest, then work your way through castles and circuses. It is quite the varied game. But how does it stack up against our criteria? Well, for the most part, I think it passes quite a few of them. It's obviously fast, even if that can make the controls a little bit difficult at times. The levels are relatively open and you have lots of areas to go to, but due to the explore and collect nature of the game, it's less multiple routes and more trying to find all the bits that you need. And with it being a frog and him using Lucozade, we match up with the final 2 criteria. So all in all, I think I'll give it 3 hedgehogs out of 5. This is followed by an animal with a big tail, so it's obviously Mr. Nutz. Who is hopping mad. This was developed by Neo and published by Ocean in 1994. And you might think I'm breaking my own rules here, but this is actually a different game to the similarly named Mr. Nutz that was on the consoles. So I think it counts. Just. And the title screen just oozes attitude, with Mr. Nutz looking like he's ready to punch you out. But once we get into the game, it actually takes on a bit of a Mario turn, as we have to navigate this map to find our level to play in. And this suffers from an issue that quite a few games that also used a map had. They end up being these large, sprawling things that take ages before you can find a level to play. And in this instance, you have to leave the island, find the bombs, blow up multiple blocks, go up and down, go round and round, and eventually you might find a level. And once you're in there, thankfully you find out that this is not a collectathon. So all those gems you can see are all about level bonuses, as all you have to do is make it to the exit. And the game moves at quite a nice pace, but that does come with an issue, as the collision detection for landing on the enemies is a little bit tight, and can be quite difficult when you're going at speed. But when you get hit, you might notice that one of your hit points goes flying onto the screen. And that is not the end of it, because if you're fast enough you can actually quickly run up to it and recollect it. But unfortunately you can't have multiple of these on the screen at the same time, so if you get hit a few times in a row, you're only going to be able to recover one hit point of health. And if you explore the map a bit, you might find an upgrade that can increase the number that you can hold, which is a nice touch. I can also say that of the water, which applies some water physics to our squirrel friend, but it also has this lovely effect on the colours and the music. And in a very Sonic, let's just say inspired way, if you head down a steep hill at speed, you'll end up rolling into a ball. Now you can't do this normally as far as I can tell, it's only when you've got that really steep slope and you're travelling at quite a speed, and it will do it automatically. And this isn't the only party trick, as if you get a feather then you become a flying squirrel. But it is only useful if you happen to have full health at the time. I also like to point out that there are shields in the game, 2 of them in fact. One that will go after a single hit, but there's also one that will last for a set amount of time, and that just happens to look like the Amiga Boing Ball. So wrap up time, how does this match against Sonic? Well, it's fast, but not the fastest game. I don't think the levels are quite open enough. There are multiple routes, but they feel more like hidden ones rather than alternatives. But between it being a squirrel and having health points, it does get those last 2 points bang on. Which gives it, I'd say, a 4 out of 5 hedgehogs. And get ready for your close-up as it's Oscar time! Developed and published by Flare in 1993, this was one of the launch titles for the CD32, as they wanted a fast, flashy platformer for the machine. And it uses this movie motif to help drive the game, as the various worlds are all based on different genres, and you get to pick it via the cinema. And then once you get into the game, it's another collectathon. But I have to say, I do like how it themes our hero for each movie style that we enter. It is one of the few nice touches of this game.
Thanks, everybody.
The levels feel like places that you can go out and explore, which is good as you will have to go out and find all the Oscar statues. And there are a set amount, so you'll have to pretty much find them all. And initially all you have is your jump to be able to defend yourself against the enemies, which can be a bit of a pain when some of the enemies are large enough that you can't get over their heads, or small enough that you can barely see them. And on top of that, you have to bounce on their heads at least 3 times before they'll die. But if you are lucky, at some point you'll find the yo-yo, which has a few uses. They can hit baddies, so you don't have to jump on them. But you can also use it to get around, by breaking blocks or even swinging on it if you found the right place. And if any of this is sounding familiar to you, then you might have played Trolls, which was made by the same team in the same year, and it also shares many of the elements. I think it's fair to say that Flare might have built one off the other. As the sound effects when you jump on a monster is the same, you have to do the same jump on them 3 times to kill them. They even share the yo-yo. What this game has over the other is that I think it is a little bit faster, which is why it makes the list and Trolls doesn't. And how well does it meet our criteria? Well, it has an okay amount of speed, but that mostly means you'll end up running into some small, barely visible baddies. So it's not all that great. The levels do have multiple routes as well as being quite open, but you will have to explore almost the entire thing to find all those Oscar statues. So you're having to visit the whole thing, rather than just taking one route through. It at least has an animal character, with it, I believe, being an otter, though it doesn't really mention that anywhere in the manual. And it also has a health system, which wasn't great, as you do get a number of health points. But I've yet to find any way of getting more during a level. Once you lost a heart, I think it's gone for good. I give this barely 2 out of 5 blue blurs. Next up is Kid Chaos. Developed by Magnetic Fields of Lotus fame and published by Ocean in 1994, this is what many Amiga owners think about when they think of Sonic clones. Because, well, just look at it. When our caveman friend jumps, he's effectively a spinning ball with a club. And when you manage to get up to speed, you can hold down to do this other spin attack. It's not quite a ball, but it is effectively the same. The game is obviously quite fast, with you being this spinning club of death. So your jumps don't have to be quite as precise as those other games, as you don't have to land on baddies just right to take them out. The game has also got springs at various angles for you to use, but when you use them you'll be far more exposed than a regular jump, so you do have to be careful about not being hit by a nasty. Which in this first level seems to be bunnies, wasps and seagulls. And while you might think that this might be a Euro platformer, it's not quite. Because while you do have to do something to open the exit, you're not really collecting. Instead, you're destroying. The end result might feel the same when you see a number slowly go down before you can finish, but it does feel different, with you bouncing off these flowers taking them all out. And due to the fact that there's more than enough of them that you really don't have to worry about it. You can typically just continue through the level, demolishing anything you see, and you'll pretty much have enough by the time you get to the end. Or at least in the early levels anyway. The general aesthetic of the game feels like something that the Bitmap brothers might have come up with the menus having their sort of look and feel to them. And while I'm playing this on a CD32, the Amiga 500 version also looks quite nice, with some great parallax scrolling going on in the background, while the foreground still looks pretty decent as well. The health system though is a little bit odd, as you have a max of 99 points, and getting hit by a creature will obviously deplete it. But not by a small number, by some surprisingly large ones, so you do have to be very careful. And you can regain your health by eating apples, or finding health bonuses, or just waiting around, as it will just slowly tick up, because that's what you want in your speedy game. Is this one of the earliest examples of regenerating health? There are also other bonuses that you can find in the levels, from those almost familiar signs. And these can give a range of improvements, but also a few limited downgrades. But in a slightly cheap way, it indicates those by just putting some text on the screen, rather than having a visual effect. And so what are the overall scores for this game? I think it passes the fast and open levels. And obviously part of that comes from the destroy-a-thon nature of the game. But it doesn't have an animal character. Even though it's reported that in its early development, the game was named Cosmic Kitten. So there's a good chance that we could have had a perfect game here. As it also has a health system, even if it is a little bit weird. So again, I think this has to be 4 chili dogs out of 5. Get out the way, here comes Quik, the Thunder Rabbit! Developed by Skywox and published by everyone's favourite publisher, Titus, this came out in 1994, and then was later republished by Amiga Action as a full game on the cover disc. And for a team that, as far as I can tell, didn't make any other Amiga games, this is a damn nice effort. There's a short but nicely animated intro, which is pretty good from a small team. Their limited experience does show up at the very start of the game, as the very first baddie you come against can't be killed. Which is a stupid thing to do when you want your gamers to mess around with the controls and get used to them. As you think you're doing something wrong, but no, you just can't kill that baddie. Particularly when the controls do take a little bit to get used to, as they're not quite what you might expect. Because jump and attack are on 2 separate buttons. So you can do that cartwheel thing while on the ground, or jump and then do it in the air. And for the most part the controls do work, you just need to get used to them. But it does feel like it throws you in at the deep end right at the beginning. Because just look at that HUD, as based on the very sparse manual, we have the number of days that have passed, the time left in the day, the number of hit points, the number of lives, how many chronos you've collected, if any of the special items have been activated, and then there's these two, the carrot and the water meters. If either of them reduce to 0, then, well, that's a life lost. It's a lot to take in right at the start. And you can top all of these up by collecting pickups that are dropped by the baddies. So there's hearts, carrots, and specially coloured potions. I'm not sure what's gained by adding in those 2 extra bars, it just feels like needless complexity. But thankfully the levels themselves are just a straight head to the exit kind of deal. Well, for the most part. Which you can spot by seeing those bunny girls. Which seems an odd thing to have in this world, but oh well. But on some levels you will have to find the extra door. And these hidden levels are a complete git to play, as you have to climb these towers to get all the way to the top. And they are guarded by this bird that, given half a chance, will whisk you right back down again. Which is a real pain to deal with. But thankfully the regular levels, while not exactly creative in design, are fun to play. But they do have lots of weird and wonderful monsters for you to go up against, with some pretty nice large bosses as well. So how does it stack up? It's got the speed, more so when you've got that speed booster on the go, and that even has this lovely comedic effect when you hit a wall. And the levels are mostly open with multiple routes. And with it having rabbits, even if they are pretty scary in the title screen, it does match that at least. And you've even got health bars, so we are looking quite good. But due to the overall game, I don't feel I can give it more than 3 out of 5 hogs. And finally we have Terraway Thomas. Published by Global Software and most likely developed by their own internal team, this was released in 1992. And this is a pretty fast game that involves jumping, a spinning animal, and if there was any doubt that this was based on Sonic, then let's quickly check the manual. The Terraway species reside on the planet Sintos Gore, a planet situated 16 bits away from the black hole called Ages. And it's just a bit left from the solar system Maga Driver, but north from the densely populated Anagram system. Yep, that's Sonic the Hedgehog. And the developers really decided that speed was the most important thing here, and they really tried to make the fastest Amiga game that they thought was possible. It's a shame they forgot to look up everything else that made Sonic. As while that jump looks cool, you can't actually take anything out with it. The best you can do is to hold down the fire button and bounce on the creature instead. Otherwise it just knocks you out for a few seconds. As there's no health in this game, your main villain is the timer. This is because you have to collect gems. Yes, it's another collect 'em up. And with that strict time limit, you'll have to use your speed to avoid those baddies, so you then can collect the gems, which thankfully there seems to be more of than are required. But it doesn't mean that it's just going to be a straight easy run to the exit, so you will have to do some amount of exploring. This has resulted in levels that are relatively short, and for the most part mostly linear, but there are extra areas where you can find a few extra gems if you manage to miss some along the main route. But it does have quite a number of maps to make up for it. But they do end up feeling very samey from one to the next. So how do we end up with a score for this game? Well, it is fast, and it has an animal-ish character, even if it is an alien. But it is mostly linear levels with no real health system to speak of, so that really does let the side down. So I'm going to give it 2 hogs out of hedges for the game. And as I feel we have the time for it, how about an extra unfinished game? This time in the form of Blaze, which is a small demo that came to light quite recently, that was made back in about 1993, at least based on the title screen. This was developed by Keith Pujaja, who had worked on a few PD games previously, and currently it's just a single level. It looks great and even has a bunch of very fancy tricks, with water going on at the bottom and even these loops, and is very quick. So this really does feel like someone looking at Sonic the Hedgehog and going, I can do that. And what's really cool is this demo was released by the developer themselves, and they've even got around to finding the source code and releasing that too. So if you want to learn more about it, then I'll put a link to their video and their blog in the description. It is actually quite a fun little game, and you can see some real promise in what could have been delivered. It's just a shame they never got the chance to finish it off. And with that, I think we've covered a decent number of games. Now, did any of them reach the top speed of Sonic? Well, no, not really. But there are some fun games here to play. And as always, if you feel I've missed any, then let me know, as I've been getting some great comments from my previous videos, and it's even opened up the possibility of doing follow-ups, which I'm really excited to do. Or if you've got anything else to say, then just let me know. And until next time, I've been the Goldfish. That was Too Fast for the Naked Eye, almost Sonic the Hedgehog, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can let me know down in the comments, or you can use those buttons just below. You know the ones I mean. Or if you're not sure yet, then you can check out 2 other videos that I've done that are on the screen right now. So thank you again, and I hope to see you soon.